What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 and why I really am starting to believe 2027 is the target date, okay? Now, 2027, obviously the anniversary, and that's a big reason. That's been, something that has been speculated about since Rebirth came out, right? Like, can you make it in 3 years? And we'll talk about that as this video goes, but, that's an early thought, and, it just looks nice to kind of just have an entire celebration, not just celebrating the base game, but then to also kind of say, like, yeah, we did it. And we managed to do it and complete it in, the year of 27 and, 30th anniversary and all that jazz. So that's always been a pretty nice idea. And I love numbers. I love celebrations. I love anniversaries. So I've been pulling for it, for a while too. And I would love it to happen. But, I was noticing something, and I'm only going to give you guys like one quote here, but it's something that I feel whenever they talk, and I'm talking about like Hamaguchi or any of them, when they talk about it, and even maybe when like interviewers interview them about it, there always feels like there's like rushing to it. And I don't know if that's like I'm putting that into the articles and into the quotes, or if it's legitimately real. I mean, you guys can let me know in the comments, but let me know if I'm crazy or if you like kind of get the same sense. Every time I feel like we see something, there's always just this hint of like, we want it out as soon as possible. So that's kind of the line. I mean, actually, they say here, I have the desire to create something like 7 Remake Intermission, right? So this DLC, and this was a story from Inverse that I think came out, earlier today. The idea that they were going to do like DLC episodes similar to, Yuffie in between, let's say, Remake and Rebirth, right? But then they say, let's focus on the third game and deliver that as soon as we can, Hamaguchi says, right? And then having the excitement of the community is something we thought was vital in approaching this trilogy. We really desire to create this momentum and keep it going so that players feel as though they themselves are part of creating the story of remixing the series. So, I mean, even, I actually don't think I read that before I hit record, but I read that first part. They're just, I don't know. I mean, tell me if I'm nuts in the comments, but there just feels like, and it's not the only time, we've heard that line where it's like, we want it out as soon as possible. Now, I want to kind of go a couple different ways with this, right? One thing that I thought of, because one thing that we've heard so much in interviews, right, is the Aerith thing. And kind of holding on to how we feel about Aerith, where, if you're confused, good, they want you to be confused. If you're upset, good, they want you to be upset. If you're happy, and we've heard that. We've heard them say that so much, really, since it happened, right? But over the last couple months, over and over and over, keep that feeling. Now, look, that could just be something you say. And that's the thing. This is just speculation. I could be totally wrong with all of this stuff. But the idea of, okay, keep that feeling, like we want you to feel certain things, and we want you to carry it over into the next game. Now, I mean, in a perfect world, you could carry it over into a next game like a year later, right? It's easier to hold on to feelings you have a year later than it is 3 years later, 4 years later, 5 years later. And I think that honestly connects to the next thing, like, sooner the better, even from that angle, even from the angle of like, we want you, whatever you were feeling in that scene, we want you to keep feeling it. That momentum part, right? Like, we want to build momentum. We want to keep things going. It's hard to keep momentum when you're doing games 3, 4, 5 years apart and you're trying to tell one game across 3 others. There's 2 other parts, okay? One is, I think, now, don't get me wrong here. Hopefully I can explain the right way. I almost feel like they're tired of it and they want it all to kind of be done. Now, and that's probably not the right way of saying it, so let me kind of rephrase. I get the sense that they realized at some point that not necessarily like this was the wrong move, but they understand where people are coming at with like the criticisms. And I could be totally off base here, but something that I have seen, as I kind of got more into covering, I covered Rebirth a ton on this channel, and, I kind of get like a new, side of the internet, people that I don't normally, see comments. And, you would see a lot, or at least I did, I would see a lot of comments of people saying, they're just not doing it. And one simple reason of not doing it is they don't want it split up across 3 games over 10 years. Like, that's not what they signed up for, or they would do it at the end. And I think it's, we've already kind of seen like them do kind of collections of Remake and Rebirth. We saw that when Rebirth came out. They need to do some sort of like steel box edition. I would buy that immediately, by the way. Some sort of like ultimate edition of Remake, Rebirth, and then whatever the third game is, right? When that game comes out. But, that satisfies something. That satisfies people that, have been waiting, but also like don't care about waiting, right? Like they, because of the structure, this is what happens. This is what happens when you put it in this way. They want the full game, certain people, right? So I think that could be part of it. Like, I have always gotten the impression where, like, they get it. I mean, they can't just, like, come out and say, say certain things, but I do think as time goes on, I mean, like, look, here's the thing. I've been willing to accept what they've done, even, like, from the story perspective and stuff, and I've been willing to accept them splitting it up and stuff, but I can absolutely understand. I think this is what makes me slightly maybe different than other people. Like, I totally get actually a lot of different sides. If you are, annoyed by, like, this structure, I get it. Imagine a game or a movie or, that you love, it's getting remade, and then they're splitting it between 3 different things, and it's like, oh my God, can you just release it either all at once, or, I mean, can you really suffer through, 3-4 years in between, and then, maybe 7, 8, 9 years in all to get the full thing? I get it. I understand how that looks, and I understand why people feel that way. So I feel like that, and okay, well, how does this connect to that 2027 thing? As soon as possible, as soon as we can. We want to get it out to you as soon as we can. 30th anniversary, and just this sense of urgency, right? Now, there's one other part to that but that's I think that's the phrase. It took me 7 minutes, but I came up with it. That sense of urgency to just get the thing done. Now, you could say, and there's, again, one more part, which is kind of the exclusivity thing, right? So now, this is definitely more speculative, and this could be true, could not be true, but because of that Sony stuff, okay, because of exclusivity, I wonder, especially now, like after Rebirth did not do what Square Enix wanted, after the hard pivot that Square Enix has been doing all year, right? This was the year of change behind the scenes, at least not necessarily management, but how they do stuff, how they manage, right? It has massively changed really kind of since Rebirth, right? And there were maybe signs before it, but the idea that this exclusivity thing is not really going to happen anymore. They are putting games out everywhere. Well, I can guarantee you that when the contract was signed for the 7, it was signed for all 3 of these games. There's no way at all, okay, I want to say a certain word, there's no way that they have the 3rd game not part of that. And I mean, maybe they can back out of it. You'd have to wonder like what kind of penalties there'd be for something like that, but you got to assume the 3rd game is exclusive in some way. Maybe it's exclusive for 6 months, maybe it's exclusive for a year, maybe they can convince PlayStation to do PlayStation and PC at the same time and then come out to Xbox like 6 months or a year later. I don't think that's impossible, by the way. I think that could happen, right? Just how fast, Rebirth is coming out on PC, 11 months, right, after the game came out. So I think that's a huge part of it too. And that definitely, I mean, maybe it's like the more controversial thing, but there's a theme. I mean, again, the theme is this rushing, but not, and I don't say it in a negative way. Now, look, I don't want it rushed out the door. I don't want, like, if it's not done, now this is actually where it could go bad, right? And this is how, if Square Enix is looking at it and saying, okay, Rebirth didn't perform. We're changing how things go with exclusivity, but this game's stuck because this game was signed to a contract 10 years ago, right? So we're stuck with having it in our old model. We've embraced this new, put everything everywhere, right? But now this 3rd game is going to be stuck on PlayStation for a year. And again, this is just speculation, but will does Square Enix think, okay, well, let's just get this thing out the door, right? I mean, I don't know, but I think that's very possible. And then whenever you hear Hamaguchi and all these guys talking about it, there does feel like this sense of we need this 3rd game out. And I honestly think it's just a mixture. I think, the 30th anniversary is probably like the last thing on their mind, but, there could be something there. But I think just to say, okay, look, like to have it be 3 years, it took 4 years, I believe, right? 2020 was Remake and then 2024. So 4 years and then 3. Like if you can pull that off, you can say, okay, well, we released all 3 parts in 7 years. And, that sounds not great depending on like how you view it, but it's better than saying 10 years, 8 years, 9 years, right? So it's like every year that you can trim, because, most games between Remake and Rebirth would have probably taken 5 years, 5 to 6. They took 4. From, the second game, Rebirth, to the 3rd game, probably would take most studios 4 to 6 years. They might try to shoot for 3, right? So it's like, they're really trying to cut it down. And for what it's worth, I think they did a great job with Rebirth. 4 years to make Rebirth from Remake. They had smart asset flipping, and they expanded where they needed to. They captured what I thought they would do. I mean, I think they did a really, really good job. So maybe they can do, the hope is actually that they would just just do that again. So I don't know. That's just been on my mind. I mean, since Rebirth came out, I was thinking 27 as, like a best case scenario. But I feel like in that room, where everybody's just crunching, day by day, I think 2027 is circled in their calendar, and they're saying, hey, if we can get this game out, this last third of it, if we can do that in 3 years from now, that's what we want to do. Now if it gets delayed, it gets delayed, and that again goes back to, well, don't force it, right? Like, you can have that mentality, and I get why you have it. We went over 3-4 reasons why they would have that mentality. I get it. If they do rush it, it's going to be kind of awkward, because it's like, well, I get why you did it, but then, at the same time, we're consumers. We're expecting a high-quality product. If you're rushing it out so we can play it, and it's bad quality because you rushed it out, well, now that's on you, and now we react accordingly. So that's not really our problem, but there's going to be that sense where it's like, well, I get it, though, because they probably just want to be, I think some of them, not necessarily Nomura, like Nomura does actually come off in interviews where he's like, I just want to be freaking done here. I just want to sleep for once in my life. But no, I think maybe from the contract thing, or just how long it's taken to do this, and maybe diminished returns. If they're not making a ton off of this or a ton back, they could be doing other things. And this is something that, like, the higher ups might think about and say, oh my God, we're stuck doing it. We're stuck with an old exclusivity deal, and we're still not done. We still have one more game to go. So, and I guess I'm kind of phrasing it like it's a drag, and it might be a drag to certain people. I mean, I freaking love it. I mean, I'll continue to take these games. I'm excited for the third game. Don't get me wrong there, but that's just kind of something I've been thinking about recently. So you let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.